We're getting into a conversation today, and our guest, it's been a long time coming, but he's finally here. The Principal Secretary in the State Department of Internal Security and National Administration is Dr. Raymond Omollo, and he's here with us this morning. Dr. good morning.
Good morning, Du.
How are you doing?
Cool. I'm doing quite okay.
Well, I like that you used the word cool because you're sitting in the hot seat of the Situation Room. So this is a great way to kind of start things off, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, we're glad that you're finally seated in the seat. It's been a while. I mean, you and C2 just having this chat before we got in that, it's been a while that we're trying. And it, I guess, goes to show to a lot of the work that you're involved in and a lot of the things that keep you busy. We're here. We're glad that you're here all the same. So thank you for honoring that invitation. We normally start the show, or rather welcome you with a proverb. CT, you may not know it, is a man of many talents. One of them is being able to go and glean from countries around the continent every week. And seeing as you sit in a particular docket, perhaps you can help him out with documentation every now and then when he gets stuck. He comes back with a proverb from one of these countries every day, and every week has a different country. He'll tell you which country we are in this week, and he'll tell you today's proverb. And of course, we're going to put you to work as though you don't have enough work to do, and ask you to interpret that proverb for us and tell us what it means to you. Is that fair enough?
Yeah, that should be okay.
Fantastic.
Yeah. We are in the Gabonese Republic. It has, well, it isn't a privilege, but it has the distinction of being in the Coup Belt. The Coup Belt is a geopolitical term that relates to countries that start from West Africa, Central Africa, and the Sahel. And that is because these are countries that have a prevalence of coups for all manner of reasons. Mm-hmm. Strangely enough, many of these countries are also very wealthy. Gabon was ruled by one family for 56 years. Omar Bongo, then his son Ali Bongo. Then the Gabonese said, it's okay. Just you guys, let somebody else take over in 2023. So here we are, a country that has been extremely wealthy. Wealthy in that it was one of the biggest producers of crude oil on this continent. A lot of that money went to the political elite. Mm-hmm. And the Mwananchi, as we call them in this country, did not quite experience the wealth of that country. It's a tragedy of the continent, a huge one, because you find a continent that is rich, and yet the poor are really abjectly poor. Anyway, the proverb. To one who does not know, a small garden is a forest.
Yes, so that's an interesting one.
Yes.
Of course, maybe one would look at it based on different context, yes, or even scenario. It's just thinking on my feet. We could look at it also. Let's take a case where you have a cow, but someone else doesn't have a cow. They have a chicken. Now, to the one who has a chicken, that's their cow. Yeah. So just looking at it, and I like the fact that you given the context of Gabon, very rich,
very,
a lot of resources, but again, not everybody gets to benefit from those resources. So, but somehow someone has something. Yeah, and that which they have is their all. Yes. When you think about it, also, I've just given the analogy of the cow and the chicken. And the same way one would jealously guard their herd, you'd also want to jealously guard that little, of course, in the context of someone who has more. When you come to what we deal with on a daily basis, even in terms of security, you look at the situation we are in as a country, we've had our fair share of security challenges. But comparatively, look at what is happening in the region. Look at South Sudan. Look at the Sudan. Look at DRC. Look at Somalia. And it's very easy to think about our challenges as actually not as huge as what the neighbors are going through. But then, if we don't do anything about what we would consider to be very small challenges, then we could easily go the way or even have much bigger challenges. So my point is, despite what we might think, despite whether we see these as very huge challenges or very small challenges, we still need to do something. We need to do something about it. When you look at it also positively, how do you maximize on the limited time or the limited resources you have, so that then you make the best of it, for not just for your own good, but for the good of society,
for posterity.
Yeah,
indeed.
You've given this matter thought, huh?
I'm telling you.
I mean, you've actually given this thing a thorough look through. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
When a proverb becomes a lesson, essentially.
No, that's giving it thought, and then letting the thought be known verbally. So yes, thank you.
Amazing. Thank you very much for that. We're looking into the balance between internal and external security in the country, and many things fall under that ambit. But I think it's also necessary, PS, even as we start this, that we see you, we hear your name. When certain things come up, we, ascribe that responsibility unto thee, and without thinking that perhaps that is not the purview under which your work falls. So we wanted to start off today to just give us a clear understanding and demarcation when we're looking at your position as the Principal Secretary in the State Department of Internal Security and National Administration. What exactly do you do?
So let me take us a step back. So I'm a Principal Secretary in the State Department of Internal Security and National Administration.
Yes.
In the Ministry of Interior and National Administration. So the ministry has 3 state departments, of which one is the one that I'm responsible for. And then we have the State Department for Correctional Services, which largely deals with inmates, or those who are incarcerated or prisoners. Then there is a State Department for Immigration and Citizen Services, which also does quite a bit when you talk about issues to do with movement, like my friend City likes to travel.
Yes.
So then they take responsibility to make it possible for him to move around. But then there are also a number of services across government. Now, broadly speaking, when you come to the State Department that I head, Internal Security and National Administration, so there are 2 broad responsibilities. One is on matters internal security, largely policy, as well as coordination of internal security affairs. And that involves a number of players, particularly the security agencies, as well as the national government administrators. Then the second major responsibility is around the coordination of government programs and activities or projects across the counties. So what is it that the national government is doing at the very basic level? So take education, for example. We have a responsibility to make sure that every child of school-going age is in school. My State Department, the State Department that I head, has a responsibility in supporting the Ministry of Education to coordinate that. You are dealing with issues of transition from one level of education to the next, making sure that those who need to be in school are in school. When it comes to the time when you're doing the exams, you support and coordinate the delivery of those exams in the right way. Take agriculture. Now the rains are just starting to fall. We expect that we get into the planting season. How do we ensure that the farmers have the right fertilizers available? Do we even know how many farmers we have? Do we even know how much land that is tillable is available? So just supporting that. You talk about healthcare. You talk about even issues around energy, issues around transport. So our responsibility or our role cross-cuts alongside literally every government ministry, government department, government agencies. And then we have both the national and county governments. Now, the interaction between what the county government does and what we do as the national government, again, ability to be able to have a seamless interaction, because at the end of the day, we are serving the same public,
right.
The Kenyans. So broadly speaking, our State Department focuses on issues to do with internal security, but also, most importantly, coordination of government programs and projects, so that then we are able to let the public enjoy the benefits of what the government is doing, also inform, and at the same time get feedback that then helps us improve on the governance and delivery of services to the people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's look at one big internal security issue that somehow seemed to take a back seat, and Kenyans are wondering. I mean, we can just jump into that water. And that Kenyans are wondering what has really happened with that. And that was in 2023 when the first, rumblings of what happened in Kilifi County in Shakahola took place. Big internal security issue.
Yeah.
And Kenyans are wondering, okay, so there was a lot of hullabaloo about what happened there. And I think we were at the 6th phase of exhumation last year in September. Yeah. And so there are two things that are happening. An initial number of 634 bodies said to have been found. And we still now, outside a county referral hospital, have a freezer of bodies sitting there, yet to be identified. And families are asking what's happening with that. So for some clarity.
Yeah, so first, when you think about the Shakahola tragedy or spectacle that happened 2 years ago now in this country, is that nobody imagined that there would be something of that spectacle. And more so when you look at it, that this was in the context of religion and Christianity, to be exact, that innocent Kenyans who are expected to be just practicing their faith were able to get into the space where we ended up losing so many lives on account of beliefs or on account of doctrines. And as a government, we definitely take the flak that this happened without us being able to take note of it in good time. Yeah, because we definitely then realized that something was going on that was not correct. And as we started to dig in, and it was shocking. If you went to Kilifi, the expansive space, the Shakahola ranch, that whole place. First of all, it's more or less like a desert. You'd not even imagine that life actually exists, because then it's close to the ranch, and then of course there's a park there. And as you start to engage, then one thing leads to the next and to the other, and it just speaks to the vulnerabilities that we have as a society. So that when people are struggling with so many things, they are looking for justifications or explanations to understand, then you still end up with criminal elements who want to take advantage of the vulnerabilities that exist in the society for whatever reason. And Shakahola is one dark blot in the conscience of our humanity. As a nation, that we must never allow to happen. But as we were going through the motions, and you pick a lot of other things. So how is it that, because who are the most affected? Most of the cases that we ended up with were women and children, the most vulnerable in our society. So how do we come up with systems that then really looks out for those who are most vulnerable? And then you look at what is happening within the faith institutions, if you like.
Yeah.
And I think it's important that there is an open conversation around how people practice their faith, and some of the things, because there's need to have a lot of self-regulations without the state appearing to be dictating to the church on what to do and what not to do. Out of that, arising out of this spectacle, the president did set up a task force that comprised of largely the faith-based institutions under the chairmanship of Reverend Mutava Musimi.
Yes.
And it picked a lot of things when that task force went across the country. We hope that in the fullness of time, we'll be able to implement and follow through some of those recommendations that they put through. Those numbers are significant.
They are.
Very, very significant. Now, as the team within the ministry, led by the DCI, the homicide team, were pulling out the bodies from these graves, and it was a lot of work to even identify where the graves or the bodies were. A good number of those bodies had really decomposed to the point that, just like you're saying, we've been struggling even to positively identify. Now, for you to be able to positively identify bodies, then you must have, whether it's relatives or people who are close to those who passed away or who lost their lives. And it's not a very easy thing, because then you're asking people to come up and volunteer if they know someone, a relative who disappeared. And in that process, you don't get everybody coming up. So even as you struggle to do those DNA analysis and the like, you end up in a situation where you have, whether it's indeterminate or undocumented cases. That is the bulk of what you've just mentioned, that we still have so many bodies that we've not been able to positively identify. Now, tied to that, then there's also the fact that there are ongoing investigations.
There's a court case going on.
There are court cases. So you cannot conclusively say that now we close the chapter on Shakahola when the court proceedings have not been able to be concluded. So it's a whole spectrum and a lot of balancing that must be done. But allow me to just appreciate the officers that have been involved in this exercise to date, particularly from our ministry, the Ministry of Interior, the detectives at the DCI, as well as even the role that the county government of Kilifi has had to play in just working closely with the national government agencies to get us to where we are. Maybe as a country, then we need to ask ourselves, how do we avoid a repeat of such, even as we try to address or deal with what necessitated all this?
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, but I see, PS, as you talk about securing the country under your ministry, there's a lot of questions that continue to be asked with regard to what has happened in the country recently. So let's talk about the abduction queries that continue to be asked. Who is abducting Kenyans? And a lot of that being directed to your office, the police being accused of abducting Kenyans. As investigations continue, what is your office doing with regard to the same? Because abduction cases still continue to be reported in the country, and as well as just making sure that Kenyans are safe, because we're talking about securing the country. Yet, even as late as yesterday, when the president was along Thika Road, Kenyans were being
Robbed?
Stolen from and robbed in broad daylight in a function that the president was in.
So Dan, it's like I said, it's a really mixed bag, and we must really go out of our way to try and have a balance in the sense that we have that responsibility to maintain security, to secure Kenyans, their property. Now, while at it, then we also are faced with those criminal elements, and there has to be moderation in terms of how we deal with it. Otherwise, then we fall into the realm of trying to go against the fundamental human rights. Take the case of the last bit you've just mentioned about where Kenyans are being robbed, and we have a responsibility to contain that. And while trying to do that, we must be able to do it in a manner that then we don't go above board. Now, look at what resources are available at the disposal of the government. In this context, we expect the police to take the responsibility to maintain law and order. Our ratio of police officers to Kenyans, we are definitely above, way outside what internationally is acceptable, which should be about 1 to 400. Now, in a population of over 55 million Kenyans, you have about 110,000 police officers. Now, start to think about it, and then you look at the size of the country, and it becomes almost impossible to have police officers in each and every corner. And then that brings then the question, how do we manage this situation? What is the role of Kenyans themselves in terms of securing and keeping this country safe? And then how do we then become innovative in terms of are there other tools, let's say technology, that we could use to help us in keeping the country safe? And that's part of what we have a responsibility to deliver on, as we also have conversations with Kenyans, and also to engage particularly the youths that some of these things that are happening, whether it's pickpocketing or taking things from those who are genuinely going about their business, is something that cannot be entertained. And also giving the confidence and reaffirmation to the police that when they get hold of these criminal elements, then we also have a responsibility to support them, so that then they take them through the due process of the law. Okay, so those are things that are going on in terms of with these events as they happen. That those agencies under your department then are actually working to make sure that some of these things come to a head. Can we make a connection then with what happened a few weeks ago in Mandera, before the president visited Northeastern? Chiefs who again work under your administration were abducted. Have they been found? Have they been returned? What exactly happened with these gentlemen, and what was the story behind all of this?
Are you asking if they've been unabducted?
Exactly. I mean, because it was quite bizarre, wasn't it? This happened, literally hours before the president comes here, and then the president did make a declaration and said, we will find them. We will make sure that they are returned, number one, to their families, and then back to their posts, and then dead silence after that.
There hasn't been dead silence. There's definitely a lot that is going on, some of which we may not necessarily be able to discuss on air. But maybe just to really understand how security then becomes everybody's concern. These are government officers. These are chiefs who work for the government, and not just any department or any ministry in government, the ministry that is responsible for securing the country. And they have been taken by terrorist elements or what you'd call Al-Shabaab elements. And this just demonstrates that none of us is immune to some of these insecurity incidences. And what we have done, and the president didn't pronounce himself, that he will do what it takes to secure the 5 chiefs.
Yeah.
We are constantly engaging. They crossed to our neighboring country. Interestingly, the borders are actually temporary distinctions between countries. The communities are basically the same. So there are active engagements that is happening to eventually ensure that they are safely back in the country.
Yes.
And then they resume their duties. But terrorism, for example, is a very complex animal, and there's a lot of balance that we must undertake, so that as we keep the country secure, then we also don't end up losing lives that ordinarily would be able to save.
And that's an external threat when we talk about terrorism.
Yeah.
But then, just piggybacking on, what Aseto asked earlier, is that there still seem, and this is essentially what we're talking about today, that creating that balance between external and internal security.
Yeah.
So 2 days ago, a member of the county assembly from Wajir reappeared.
Yeah.
He's been missing for 6 months, and it said that he had been abducted as well. He's been taken to hospital to try and sort out his physiological issues, but the psychological problems that he's going through are something. Every time we hear about abductions, we start to ask questions about, so then what happens when the National Police Service and those under that, and what work are they doing? And with all the 1 million things that you have to do, it falls squarely under you, right? And we've also heard proclamations where the police will say, it wasn't us. So what confidence building then is being done for Kenyans, whereby the very agency that is supposed to secure their security, if we can use 2 words, the same word in the same sentence, is saying that they do not know? When chiefs are abducted by an external force, and when government employees or elected by the people essentially in the name of an MCA can be abducted over 6 months and then turns up, no explanation, nobody knows where he's been, but he's starting to give testimony about what happened to him, how does that build confidence? And what do you do to ensure that such things don't happen?
So this is definitely the primary responsibility of government to secure everyone. In the case of the MCA, it will be interesting to also just find out what really happened for these 6 months. You remember at one point, there was even a conversation of a body of an MCA who was abducted, in quotes, having been picked somewhere. Of course, then someone would be asking themselves, there were 2 different MCAs, one abducted and dead, another one abducted in quotes and finally has shown up. It will be good, of course, they are in hospital. It's important that they go through the motions, and it will be good that we are able to even hold people to account. At times it becomes very difficult being government when everyone expects everything from you, while you do not necessarily, in certain instances, get the same kind of support or feedback. It's like, in the morning I wake up, I leave my house, I'm going to work. For whatever reason, I end up in Mombasa, and I haven't told my family that I'm in Mombasa. And then my family then says the PS has been abducted. And we have had instances, and we all live in this country, where someone is alleged to have been abducted. 2-3 days later, they were at a boyfriend's house, and so you're like, okay, what must the government do? And at the same time, what must Kenyans do? So that, yes, we are very clear as a government, it is not a government policy to do abduction, and the president has been very unequivocal about this, that this can never happen and will never happen under his watch.
Right.
if in instances where there are excesses, we have very robust mechanisms to hold people to account, particularly officers of government.
Have they been held to account, though? Do we see situations where abductions have happened? There have been many cases. 5 young gentlemen disappeared over the Christmas period. Before that, 3 gentlemen disappeared from Kitengela. Have there been investigations as to what happened to them, who took them, and where they were being held?
I will not go into any specific case for whatever reason, particularly where there are active investigations. If you look at what Independent Police Oversight Authority have taken up, because that is their constitutional responsibility as part of oversighting the National Police Service, they have a report of cases of people reported missing. And out of those, they have detailed what has been concluded, what is under active investigation. And you'll be shocked, like when you look at what they present of 40 cases that they were dealing with last year, there are about 14 or 16 that is under active investigations. Another 10, they have conclusively dealt with it. And about 4 or 5 cases where they have taken the police to court.
Okay.
Just to demonstrate that nothing is actually being shielded from the view of Kenyans. The kind of transparency that we all must adhere to as per our constitutional expectations. So when there are cases that we know or that we can be able to ascribe to any police officer, then we have the internal affairs unit within the National Police Service that deals with that in terms of the disciplinary process. Then outside that, then you have the Independent Police Oversight Authority that also follows through. Now, broadly speaking, you will agree with me that what the police have been able to do over the years or over the last 1 to 2 years has been quite commendable. And in the few instances where there would be or there have been excesses, those have effectively been dealt with or are under active investigation. Yeah.
Now, PS, there is a feeling out there that let's paint the picture. Last year, during the Gen Z demonstrations, there is a feeling that the police are using excessive force in dealing with the demonstrators. Must they always use excessive force when doing this? Because if you extrapolate that to the year 2025, recently when the young people went to Roysambu and they were outside as well, chanting slogans, and they were there, tear gas was lobbed and they were beaten to a pulp. Use of excessive force in dealing with demonstrators. Is that the modus operandi when it comes to dealing with protesters?
No, not at all. What the police do and what they are expected to do is to use reasonable force, which reasonable force depends on the kind of threat that the police are faced with. So, for example, if, like you've mentioned about the Roysambu case, where the protesters have barricaded roads, they want to storm the church, and the police have lobbed tear gas, which is basically as a deterrent. So then today, if there are demonstrators across the road, and they're basically on the verge of storming your offices, would you want the police to walk away without the need for them even to use tear gas, because those are tools that for them is part of their trade? So it becomes a very tricky balance. And just like I've said, in instances where there, for example, you don't expect police to use live bullets, that definitely is completely out of place. But if, for example, there's a criminal element among the protesters, because most of these protesters are genuinely protesting about certain things and they're doing it peaceably and unarmed. But if in the process there are people who infiltrate and then it stops being peaceable, where you have some of them being armed, what does the police do? They definitely would be expected to use tear gas. They would be expected to apprehend and then, of course, produce these characters, these individuals in court. And what they have done consistently is exactly that. Of course, there would always be a few exceptions where there are a bit of excesses. And remember, these people like you and me, you've been hit by a stone. In the heat of the moment, there's a possibility that there would be overreaction. And in instances where there are those overreactions, then we must be able to process them. But broadly, for me, the subject that we also maybe need to look at, we've had instances where Kenyans have gone to court and the police have been told not to use tear gas, not to use rubber bullets.
Yep.
And then you're asking yourself, this police officer is your brother. This police officer is your father, is an uncle. So we then are basically telling them if there is any protest, they need to remain in their stations. You are talking about people being carjacked on the streets. If the police came out and lobbed tear gas, and the point would be to deter this, but you have motorists, you have riders, you have kids who are coming from school. What comes out will be that the police have lobbed tear gas at the general public. People will just have nothing to do with the protest. But their intention was not these people. The intention is to deter those who are actually causing commotion. So it's a very tricky balance. And what I would really plead or ask of Kenyans is that these police officers are not aliens. They are Kenyans. And in as much as we must hold them to account for action or inaction, we have a responsibility as a country to also feel for them, given the challenges and the uniqueness of the responsibility that we have assigned to them, so that then at the end of the day, this country belongs to all of us, and each of us has a role to play. The security sector or the security actors have a bigger responsibility because the Constitution demands so of them. But as we do that, then the rest of the country needs to work with us. And maybe that takes me to what we are also looking at in terms of the security sector institutional reforms.
Right.
We are looking at some of the acts, like the National Police Service Act, the National Police Service Commission Act, and a number of other legislative arrangements following the recommendations that were made by the task force that the president appointed as soon as he came into office.
To sort some of these things out.
To sort some of these things in terms of the occupational hazards that the police face, the equipment at their disposal, even the level of capacity in terms of how do we capacitate officers in the context of just looking at human rights, in the context of our constitutional dispensation, so that as they do their policing services, they do it in a way that is alive to the realities of
what
today.
they do.
Yes.
But there's something else, Bona P.S. Everything we speak of speaks directly to the relationship the public has with the police who work under your ministry. And it also speaks to things that you would know and things that are being done, but the public has no knowledge of. There have been attempts in the past to show up and build up community policing, attempts to foster better relationship between the police and the police service and the citizenry. One sees attempts of that sort being made by the judiciary. Open days, alternate justice systems that are being spoken of. The police probably need this more than the judiciary, because the justice system, the judiciary, you go to them. They don't come to you. The police we interact with on a daily basis. They're almost civilian in the nature of their work. Now, difficult as the workload and the expectations are, surely attempts to ensure that the citizenry understand the police service better. Just understand. Because when you understand someone and they do something, you have a context from which to judge it. But in the absence of that, you will let your mind roam. And a lot of instances, or the perspective that we draw is based on what we read, what we hear. My colleague Dennis has talked about the lobbying of tear gas. Now you throw that against a backdrop of young people who are abducted. You take it back to last year, June. Now, someone has summarized the police, but the police service do a lot more than just that. There are many things that they do that are positive, and there are many things without which, if they didn't do what they did, then some of the things we take for granted wouldn't happen. But now, the effort to ensure that those relations are actually fostered so that the citizenry understand. We may disagree, but we understand.
Siti, you are very right, and for me and the rest of my colleagues that we serve with in the ministry, we take it that the kind of feedback like what you are sharing with me this morning is very important, because that is something that over the years we haven't done well in, just to make the citizenry appreciate who is a police officer, what does a police do, if I'm in trouble, how do I get to get support, to get help from the police. And the judiciary have really done well with their open days, and for me this is one of those interventions that we need as a ministry responsible for matters of security, that we will be able to follow up. And a number of these were partly picked by the Maraga task force in terms of just making the public understand what the police is doing.
Yeah.
Because we are actually a public-facing service, and that is why it's the police service and not a force. So we take it that this is something that we must undertake, and the commitment from me is that we will work closely with the Inspector General of Police and the team, so that then we have more of open forums where we're able to engage
and discuss some of these
and
things.
discuss some of these issues.
Can I talk
Yes,
about
one of
training
the-
of policemen?
Yeah.
I mean, we know they're trained in Kiganjo. Refresher courses, introduction to other ways of providing services. Probably this thing already happens. But if it did, then we'd see it manifested in the way they deliver their services. How often do we look through the curriculum that we use for teaching our police men and women? And how often do we get them, whether it's in servicing, in training, whatever it is? Because given the pressure that job comes with, beyond that, there is the need for them to also vent. There is the need for them to receive counseling services. There's the need for them to also have the sort of protection that makes their mental state safe for the work that they do. Are these taken into account, and are these considered?
Actually, a number of the issues you mentioned are actually being taken into account. Actually, when you look at the police reforms that we are currently rolling out, we are not just trying to look at their terms of service in terms of their remuneration. We are also looking at building capacity in terms of the trainings that some of them you've mentioned. We are also looking at their mental health, because that has also become a very big issue. You've had or seen instances where a police officer shoots another, or even shoots or kills themselves.
Yes.
And largely this is because of the mental state, given the kind of the work pressure and the environment that they operate in. And what we have done is we have now incorporated all this as part of the reforms that we are rolling out. We are reviewing the curriculum for the police. Remember, when you take the police officer to Kiganjo, the training is 9 months, and it's very intense. So we are onboarding some of these interventions, so that then we're able to have a much more holistic curriculum that gives you the complete police officer.
Of that, yeah.
Yes, we are also looking at leveraging on technology because just like I've said, it's impossible to have a police officer in each and every corner. So how do we make use of technology? And even in terms of when you look at some of the crimes that we are dealing with, a lot of it has now moved into the technology space.
Yeah.
We're talking about
cybercrime and things like this.
So
exactly.
how well is a police officer equipped to understand that there is a crime that has been committed, whether it is cyberbullying, whether it is issues to do with the content that is passed, whether it's pornography and exposure of even the children or those who are underage to some of these vices.
Okay, I want to move to one issue that has gripped Kenya for a few weeks as well, is that looking into the security issue around the removal of some kinds of vetting towards identification, especially in the northern parts of the country. What exactly is going on with this? And for an explainer, what exactly does it mean when we're saying certain elements of vetting then essentially would be removed? And how does this affect security?
So what we are doing, and this is one of those commitments that the administration of President Ruto made even before coming into office, is that we were more or less having two sets of citizens. One set that is treated in one particular way, and another set being treated differently. And we all agree that in this day and age, that is something that we cannot sustain for us to have a society that is equal. Now, we have had Kenyans, particularly from the border counties, and this is not just the border with Somalia or Ethiopia. It's across, whether it's with Uganda, whether it's with Tanzania, or South Sudan, that let's treat every Kenyan equally, particularly when it comes to giving them identity documents. And what the government has done, in essence, is we have taken away the need to do extra vetting. And in the case, for example, which you've spoken to, is that we have existing government infrastructure. We have the chiefs, we have the assistant chiefs, and they would be able to tell us that yes, this is a Kenyan born to so and so, and therefore they have reached the age of 18, and therefore they need to get identity cards.
One of the initial issues around, though, that was the security, that of course when you had cross-border security issues, and that's why that vetting cap was put there in the first place. Now, with this removal of those certain elements, are you then able to ensure that the same security concerns which brought this about in the first place then are taken care of?
Exactly. We have done exactly that, so that we are still dealing with the external security threats, just like we have done over the years to keep the country safe. And for your information, for the last 2 years, we have been able to fairly keep a very good security posture in terms of external threats. Now, when you talk about even issues around terrorism that we constantly deal with, on the one end, it looks like something that is alien, that is external, while in reality, over the years, a number of those incidences have been by people who are actually, to put in quotes, not necessarily people who have would have been from neighboring or from other countries. And therefore, what we are basically doing is that, number one, we are treating every Kenyan the same way, while still keeping our security under control from both what you'd consider as external threat as well as internal threat.
Okay.
Yes. So and when you think about it, now every child who is born gets a birth certificate. And over time, looking at the transformation...
I was saying before they didn't automatically get a birth certificate.
There are people who you'll meet who are 18 who don't have a birth certificate. Yeah.
So then it brings into the question how they get an ID.
But in reality, it's not. Now, what we are doing progressively is that every child automatically get their birth certificate, so that by the time they get to 18, that then makes it very obvious and easy for them to get the ID, so that then even the conversation about vetting and not vetting who gets an ID would never be an issue.
So, PS, let's delve into the subject of trust deficit. And there is a feeling that Kenyans do not trust the police. And why do I say this? Recently, I will talk about the clashes in Kilgoris and Kisii, and we had politicians making statements there that a politician would pay 100,000 shillings for every thief that is burnt to death. And that brings the question of the rule of law and where these lies, because up to now we've not seen any action taken against these politicians, which begs the question, why does it feel as though you talk about treating Kenyans equally, but when it is on the side of politicians, nothing seems to matter? But when it comes to who would want to call the Kawaida Mwananchi or Wanjiku, all force would be deployed on them. When does the rule of law appear? Are there special citizens?
So Sudan, we don't have any special citizen, and we treat everybody equally. We've had several instances where there are clashes, and where there is evidence that politicians or any leader is involved. We have actually done so. In the case of what is happening between Kisii and Kilgoris, there is already a lot of engagements. There are people who have been apprehended, even as we continue with investigations. Now, the clashes in Kisii and Kilgoris is not just unique to that part of the country. We've had similar challenges in places like Tana River, Garissa, and a number of hotspots. The other time we took in the leaders from Tana River, and there was a lot of hue and cry, but it was for good measure. And in the process of having to have them make statements, warn and have those who are culpable taken through the judicial process, we have been able to get calm back into that part of the country. So what assurances are we giving Kenyans is that we treat everyone equally, and just like we have done in every other part of the country, we will be able to do this even in the case of Kisii and Kilgoris.
As we balance things internally, and I just want to ask this question really quickly, even as we come to the end of this, is that, so there's an external security where police officers are in Haiti. What is the unfolding situation here? We've seen one loss of life, and that has been reported at least. And how long will this force be out here trying to balance security in Haiti, when there seems to be so much that needs to be balanced internally here?
So first, it's quite unfortunate that we lost an officer in Haiti, Moses, who hails from Kajiado. The body came early this week, and we are working closely with the family to give him to go through the final rites before the body is interred. And the circumstances were also very, very unfortunate, because this was a peace keeping service supporting the Haitian police, and in the process of what they're doing, we lost his life. Up to now, we have over 700 police officers in Haiti, and they've been there now for about a year.
Yes.
They've done a commendable job. Remember, this was not us going to Haiti just by our own volition. This was on account of a resolution by the United Nations. There was that special request, and Kenya heeded to it. And for us, it's an opportunity just to demonstrate what is good with us as a country, but also just to support peaceful return to order in Haiti. And a number of other countries have actually now joined this mission. Now, do we stop doing this because there are challenges internally that we must deal with? And my answer is I don't think that is right. Yes, we have our issues that we are dealing with and we must constantly deal with. But then also whenever there's an opportunity to also lend a hand to our neighbors, our friends. Haiti seems far removed from this country, but we are a global community, and I think we have a responsibility, and we are proud of our officers, and as a country, I think for me this is a big show of our support.
I mean, our time runs out, unfortunately, and a myriad of issues for us to continue looking at. But we want to thank you for being here with us this morning, even as we continue to discuss and make these issues front and center. The Principal Secretary in the State Department of Internal Security and National Administration, Dr. Raymond Omollo, has been our guest this morning. Thank you for being in the hot seat of the Situation Room this morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.